rearrange the groups. They were trying to get other people some access to them, and he's like, no.
Put him.
But we
Wow.
So, yeah, that was,
So you've been good your whole life.
well, yeah, I mean, I've been single digit since I was,
So that was it. Mice are muted.
14,
On the front
so.
board, you still see the action.
Man.
It's
So
not-
now I think I'm holding on to it for vanity more than anything. I don't know, you know, I'm a
But that's it.
consistent
So that's it. We got Sam.
77 to 84.
Go back to
I wanted to put a lock, so I'm looking at everything. Sometimes having to go look in the back, because you're gonna be there. So let's just do it full and full.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 in its entirety.
You have time to,
Yeah.
just because I had I had some decisions I need to
I
make.
told her I'm good all day. She mentioned 3 to 7. I'm like, that's perfect traffic, cut the traffic back.
You're not wrong. You're kidding, right?
No, no.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, other than just my Friday executive holdout's got it, but I can do it.
What time is your exit?
What's your
Thanks for
morning
volunteering.
look like? Are you free after this board meeting?
About for a phone call to 2.
No, I
She's
won't
leaving.
have-
Okay.
Actually during, I don't leave during, but I'm coming back. So I think I should be back around 11. I just pushed everything that I had. Here's some.
Of course.
I'm gonna text you stuff.
I'm gonna, I'm gonna do it the backwards way. I'm gonna text you because I don't know this number yet.
Okay, perfect.
I can tell you what your number is.
That'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
That'll be for you.
Okay, oh yeah, immediately.
You want me to-
Wow.
Hang on, I have no clue. Trust me, I have it.
Okay. Okay.
Test. Test.
Test.
I see what you're saying to the implement.
Am I losing much sleep over it? So I never ever said anything old listener or opinions. I think what happened, here's where I think he got some ways. She's You can make for quick work.
I always tell people, I'm a bottleneck, get me out of the way. What do I? Yeah, yeah. I'm getting ready to get out of the way. After this lead fall over today, my part is done. Huge. Remember when we said, let's build some big things?
So it's automatically afterward we have to turn them on.
Big, you don't even want to turn them all on. Stuff you're gonna talk about. So we'll start.
100.
No, I'm glad you check stuff like that, because, who knows? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Go turn off my phone.
It's not my face or place, but I think it's helped to understand that there might be another dynamic. Good, good.
So how many grandchildren do you have?
He's excited about the village.
Yeah, so
What he's like,
so I
one
didn't
thing
have
big,
that up
he
to
was like, we
date
could
stuff,
be,
so I just took the percent
you could have all
increase
your
from
programs in there,
current
and
construction
still have our
and just did that
build-based
same
classroom
percent increase
space
from the old steel.
and
Wow.
practice
Yeah, so it was the old.
I'm gonna have 0.
to us.
Neither of my children.
Like, the only thing with the practice field,
Which I think says a lot about me, actually.
that would be, can't mess with, and I understand, right?
Yes, actually, no, they're just,
But I was like, it's not my decision.
They're just
but
me
you
on
guys, like,
steroids.
it's not my
So they
decision,
know it's not like
but
and I really like
he's
having
an
children.
advocate. He's a huge fan.
I mean, it wasn't easy, of course.
And you know that, I mean, I have to wear that agenda on my sleeve.
Yeah, but I'm never gonna come up to
Okay.
I wanted to, I got to.
All right, we're at 9:01.
Are you gonna do the first couple sets?
Yeah, wanna take him?
Today is Friday, May 24th, and we are doing a special meeting with a very specific agenda. And it is 9:01. Ms. Wood, would you do a call to order? Yeah, Ms. Wood. Roll call.
Here.
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 Here. Okay, can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so our first and only item is B1, to consider and approve contract to purchase real estate property.
Might I propose a motion?
Sir?
I'd like to recommend a motion to authorize the Chief Business Officer to sign the contract to buy real estate known as 1200 and 1110 Cynthia's Avenue in Monument, Colorado, 80132, and to pursue necessary services to complete both a thorough due diligence inspection of the property as well as architecture and consultant services to determine the interior redesign and programming placement at that location, intended to be available for the 25-26 school year.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, discussion. Mr. Ridgway, would you like to, do you have some information to share?
If you'd like us to run through a few slides of information,
Yes,
we can do
please.
that. Okay. So we'll start with just kind of level setting on where we've been and where it has brought us to this point today. First, this action being aligned with the board's goals for educational pathways to support future readiness. And on this slide here, we have some of the prior conversations noted that we've had and the references to those goals and such. When it comes to the specific facility, they have some points here that I have presented to the board about how Senate Bill 2417 and the work that we did with that starting late last summer really was also lined up and aimed towards this specific opportunity or this idea that is becoming an opportunity now with this consideration. And I think a key point that I always want to reemphasize is that with Senate Bill 2417 frees up captive fund balance. It gives us the benefit of decoupling the CTE facility conversation with the what to do with Grace Best conversation. And both of those can continue in parallel, but they don't have to be intertwined as much as some of our earlier assumptions would have been. That said, what the funds with 2417, I think a good opportunity for us to look at that is as an investment, a use of money for an investment. 2417, it frees up that captive fund balance, which are estimating to be about $8.5 million, again, as one-time money. And what to do with one-time money is usually a capital-oriented opportunity is the best thing to do with one-time money. So looking at something like this and doing it with a perspective as it being an investment rather than simply just a capital spend is a good perspective for us to keep in mind, because it really helps limit our downside with this type of decision.
Mr. Joy, before you jump on
Sure.
a previous slide where you mentioned some timelines, I think it's
Up here.
important. Yeah, I think it's important to expand on that just a little bit, because this looks like everything just started in the last couple of months and it's just flying through pretty quickly. But I think it leaves out the fact that these initiatives were set in motion at a time last year.
Correct.
That I think what's missing that the community is not going to realize is that this was part of a goal that was put in place many, many months ago, and that the pursuing of the funds, what I'm concerned about is that the community is going to feel like we had a windfall of funds and it's burning a hole in our pockets and we're deciding to spend it, not understanding that, again, this was part of a directive put in place last year, or an initiative put in place last year, and that the pursuit of the funds was actually for this purpose.
In response, yeah. Response, you're right.
And that we are midway through a timeline, or maybe not even quite midway through a much longer timeline. I think it's going to be really important to get that out there, because the few people I have spoken with in the community don't really know anything about this, and it started before I was on the board, and to be honest, I wasn't even aware of some of the timelines and things that were in place. So I think it's going to be a really important thing to keep our public over-informed about.
No question on that. If you can attempt to describe your vision of a one-page slide, so to speak, that would depict this continuum, what might that look like? So that we can get
I mean,
it right.
to answer this question, I would say one of the first things probably missing, so to speak, would be a timeline showing where this started, the steps that we've gone through up until now. I mean, pursuit of these funds is a huge, huge step, and a very creative way to do it that actually benefited every school in Colorado, and it was all in pursuit of District 38's trying to make this happen. So I think that's really important. And also emphasizing the fact this was done as a way to avoid going to the public to ask for a bond or MLO.
Exactly.
And by doing it this way, we could show an alternate timeline too. I mean, we could, of course, come out with infinite amounts of information to keep everybody happy and still never make everybody happy. But I mean, one of the questions that's going to come out is, why are we doing it this way, of course? So we could also show an alternate timeline if it came down to it, showing what it would take if we were to go out and pursue getting a bond, attempting to market that for the next year, year and a half, getting public input and buy-off, and then starting the process of construction, and how that would put us, if it even got past 3-4 years down the road from where this is going to put us. There's a lot of benefits to this, and so
Yeah.
I'm just kind of jumping around, and this may already be in Mr. Ridgway's slide, so I don't want to screw that up, but
Do you think it would be valuable, does the team think it would be valuable to also find a way to make the point that there likely are no other school districts in the state that have been able to do this without incremental taxpayer investment?
if that is true, that's a huge point to emphasize.
It's highly likely. Every place I've probed into, they either passed a bond and or an MLO, which means incremental resident taxpayer investment for a long term.
And we have to clearly state up front why this path started, where it came from, and why it's critical.
And this may be in Mr. Ridgway's 10 slides here, so I could be totally messing up his presentation, so I apologize.
Well, just with Jessica McAllister here, and we were reminded about this timeline that we put out in the May 7th work session conversation. I think to your point, this demonstrates how it really goes back to the spring of 23, a full year ago. And so, yes, to your point, we're probably in the 40% of the timeline here, not just at the beginning. And so you can see that the arrow that she's put here that we were talking about just a couple weeks ago about the point that we're in. So all this work is what has transpired before now. And yes, there's still work to go, of course, but I think exactly to your point, this is not something that's rash and money bring in the pocket, as you say.
Am I missing, or does this slide depict the point in which the public input will be gathered before I don't want them to think that we're just moving forward and it's too late, that the ship's already sailed. I think it's important to note that there are points that this allows us to take the next step forward to secure the building, at least in the contract, so that we can start investing some money in these conceptual drawings without the risk of losing the building out from under us. And that's the point where we'll be able to create something that will be much easier to show the public with what we're trying to do and gather their input around the ideas. And it will be an iterative process with those designs, from kind of a raw what we can do with the building, and then start seeing, as the community of it comes together and as we progress down the line, the iterations of how that space will be utilized ultimately.
And if I may, I would just like to speak a little bit to this, because you're completely correct. We do have intentions, depending on the outcome of this meeting today, to assemble our community together into one meeting. We have a name for it, maybe called Innovate 38, to happen on June 20th. In that session, we have some plans to really gather some input, present some information to our communities, give them some background information, and then to actually create a survey and disseminate it amongst our community to also gather some feedback as to the programming that they feel, based off of the information we present to them, would be a benefit to have in this program immediately, right, initially. Knowing that the idea behind this is to have a flexible space that will just adapt over time. And so from that Innovate 38 session that we're hoping to have on June 20th, and embedded within the survey that we hope to disseminate to our community is going to be an opportunity for folks to sign up to be on a task force, of which will continuously meet to inform programming and design with architects throughout the course of the summer and into the fall. So we're positioned to respond exactly how you're speaking of today.
Good. I will mention, because I've been public about this before, I felt like our community involvement doesn't always get us the best results, but I really like Ms. Westein's approach to randomly requesting people from the community to get involved and not just finding the same 10 people that are involved in everything. So I think that'll be really important to use that method.
That's a good idea. And we do have some different advisory committees that meet frequently. So I plan to send an invitation out to the CTE advisory crew, which is comprised of teachers and industry partners. We spoke yesterday about sending it out to the Guiding Coalition, maybe out to the PCAC, just really targeting some of those groups, but also putting it out for the general public at that very first iteration on June 20th. We are talking also about having a link to sign up so we can be prepared for how many might come. And so, yeah, the community input is going to be paramount into this process.
Absolutely. And again, may be and hopefully is already in place, but just we need to be ready to anticipate the kinds of questions that we know we are going to get. Why are we doing this? Why are we not using this for teacher salaries? I don't know the answers to all these. Why are we not using this to get caught up on deferred maintenance? Why are we getting this building on the other side of town? A lot of questions are going to come out, and I think it's going to be really important to emphasize the benefits of doing things this way, and that we can make the 24-25 school year, which any other approach.
25, 26.
What's that? 25-26. I'm sorry, 25-26. You're right. Getting ahead of myself. But that any other approach would put us back minimum 2, 3, 4 years. And that this is not a sunk cost. This is if we threw a $10, $15 million building on one of our campuses, it's kind of limited to what it can be. This is a commercial space that will have market value, and the majority of our TIs will increase the value of this space. I think we'll hopefully be mindful to make sure that any improvements we make will do that and not be specific to us or make it less appealing to another person down the line. So we still do have the opportunity to do another space more central to town, custom built, should that be what we in the community decide is best, but we would never make it in the next 3, 4 years without doing it basically in this approach. So, yeah, just things I want to get out there on kind of in the public record, because I think that the community is going to feel like we're moving quicker than we should be, because there hasn't been a lot of community involvement yet, but it just hasn't been at that point where we could really bring it in and show them what we're trying to do just yet. And again, some of this was set in motion even long before a couple of us were even on the board. And again, not as a cop-out for us in any way, just more that this has been in motion for a while.
Oh, yeah, it's just a clarification of the reality.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for sharing your, because that's information that I think is very valuable as we're deliberating on this. And I recall when we started this process, it started way back when we started the Portrait of a Graduate work. And then we did get feedback from the advisory committee, the Accountability Advisory Committee. So there has, but to Mr. Brown's point, that dialogue, we've had dialogue in some board meetings, we've had dialogue in various different committees. So this is the next step in that dialogue, but making sure, I agree with you and concur that making sure that we are doing this with the community, not at the community,
and the community of taxpayers, they're the customers, it's their dollars. So making sure that they are having that input in what is the wisest choice on how to make this facility the facility that it is. And that's why that's why Mr. Ridgway was successful in pursuing 2417 to make sure that we have those funds, those one-time dollars. And I believe I think you're right. We will ask, well, why isn't it being used for teacher pay? And having to understand that one-time dollars that are designated that wouldn't be sustainable. And then it would be putting a horse before the cart, because then eventually we'd have to go to taxpayers and ask them to subsidize what we started.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or thoughts before Mr. Ridgway continues? Those are all those are very valid. And I appreciate that you brought that to the surface as one board member.
So maybe I'll find out where a good place for us to pick back up on this. As we talked about, and in the most stated in the motion, it is a specific facility we're looking at on Cynthia's Avenue, the former home of J-Bo Monument. I think a real important point is that there's not a lot of space available in this regard, and the current owner views us as a preferred partner in the disposition of their asset. But they want to dispose of their asset, move their asset. And so part of the timing question is opportunity with that, which opportunities are fairly limited with this. In fact, there's nothing else available on the market, and hasn't been during this whole window that we've been working this spring. That would be another option for it. And we've talked a little bit here about how we're going to plan this. So this last point here will be an important point for how to make this successful with this involvement of staff and community, and with experts, as in Tatiana Bailey, as in the architect firm, as in a general contractor, to really put this all together. And so all these things can really work in parallel to all come together and focusing on that targeted opening in the fall 25. We have some examples here in our presentation of CTE spaces that I know some of you have seen, and some of you are still going to go see what other districts have been able to do in this regard. It's really just such a different concept from the traditional space, and that's again why this type of warehouse space is a good opportunity to bring this together, to make it happen here in our district and for our students. So, is there anything you want to say on this slide in particular?
This is based on a project that I did in 2012, where we did a very similar concept of converting a warehouse into educational spaces, so that we can actually conceptualize how that occurs. Sometimes it's really hard to visualize a warehouse becoming education. And so this was not CTE, it was a little bit of a different type of project, but we can still look at the pictures that started here with just an empty open warehouse. And then what we were able to convert into for the type of learning that was desired in this application. And so this was a lot of work with community and with the architect to envision this concept, and it's been highly successful. So we do have the CTE prospect, and this is the J-Bo building. And as we look at it, it is a nice concrete structure. It's a 100-year or more building. We do have land next to it so that we could expand parking and future educational opportunities. As we look at this, we've looked at doing a new construction from ground up, and the costs in this are looking at a metal building. So this would be more like a 30 to 50-year structure and not the 100-year structure. So we have to be careful to understand that we wouldn't have the structural reinforcement to do a two-story with this concept. And so this is assuming that we put a little bit of money into land, or we could potentially use our own. And this is looking at inflation of about 7% of the hard costs per year, this would take us at least 2 years to get to because we have to spend a full year to design and another year to construct. So this puts us out to the 26 at best school year. And this is about 13,668,000. The next slide is kind of a ballpark of what we would be spending on doing this. It's 10,940,000 using the current building, and then we would have the architectural fees. And then we would be looking at some FF&E, which is going to be furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. So if there were tables, chairs, desks, cabinets, that type of thing. We would also be looking at technology so that we will be making sure we have surveillance cameras, anything that we would need to make sure our students are safe in the building. Again, there's inflation and contingency, but this one is ballparked because I don't know to what extent we're going to need to be doing renovations until we get the design in place. With that being said, there is a lot of things that this building offers. We have enhanced electrical capacity that we would not have to be bringing in anything additional. It already has compressors, and so we would not have to be bringing in anything like that for the machinery and types of things that this program would require. So there's a good chance this is going to be less than 10 million, but I wanted to make sure we don't go over that. Definitely under.
Yeah, to be honest, I think the gap between what it would take us to do it ourselves versus what this is estimated out to be is way greater than what you're depicting here.
I concur.
Because again, a steel building is not the same. It's not going to have the same appeal, capabilities. We've got, as you mentioned, we've got the equipment coming with us that we wouldn't have to invest in, and time. I mean, literally years in addition. So.
It is. I think the other thing is that this building is strong enough to be able to do upper level. So in areas above the warehouse spaces, if ever there were the need to expand, we have a lot of expansion opportunities, and we can see that in the next slide.
Maybe one more noteworthy point while you're changing slides
Yes.
is the stewardship of the taxpayer investment would be much less with a steel building because its future value would be significantly less versus a 100-year building.
That will be freshly renovated.
Right.
That contingency, that's, if I remember learning about this when we talked about construction and architecture firms, that's a pretty industry standard on contingency, the percentage, right?
It is for this type of construction, and so this is not contingency that would be held by the contractor. They would also have their own. We don't give this away, so at the end of the project, if we did not go over budget because we found asbestos or something that was unknown to us, we would take this back and keep it.
And then I also recall that there's like a 7 to 8% inflation cost and a 7 to 8% architecture cost.
Yes, so actually in here, typically for soft costs, which is going to be our architectural, we put 10% in. If you notice, this 250,000 is much less than that of the renovation costs, and that is because we already have a cost from the architect. And so we're not going to have to be doing any of the surveying or the testing and soils and things like that because the building's already in place. So again, this 250,000 is a lot less than what we would typically see in that spot. You are correct, 7% inflation per year is what I've currently got in there.
Can you explain real quick, one of my questions was the listing price versus the acquisition price is different.
The listing price on the flyer that you have is just for the building itself and not for the lot that's also next door to it. And so we are proposing to acquire both properties.
Okay, so it's just that increase.
Yeah, so that 600,000 is cost of the lot.
Okay,
That $600,000 difference.
thank you. I had a feeling that's what it was, but I wasn't quite sure.
Okay.
Any other questions before we move to the next slide? Or thoughts? No? Okay.
So if we look at this building and what it can occupy, or how many occupants we can have, we look at the different types of use, and because we don't know what's going into the space yet, for International Building Code, occupancy is 50 square feet per person for vocational type activities, Or if we're doing sit-down classroom spaces, that's going to be 20 square foot per person. And so that's why there's a range in each location. Each part of the building has a square footage. And so for an example, on the far right-hand upper box, it's 4,400 square feet, which can hold 88 to 220 occupants depending on the use. And so if we look at the bottom, the CTE prospect occupancy, the lower level could hold 317 to 793 students and staff, or in the upper level, 172. The reason I only have one number for the upper level is because it's not likely we're going to have machinery and that kind of stuff on the upper level. So that gives us about 498 to 965 people that can be in that building at one time. Keeping in mind that because we're going to be rotating students in and out, they may be there a half a day, they may be there every other day, we can put a lot more students in the space than just that 700 or 965 kids. We could have that twice as many throughout the day. We could do a future expansion, which is, like I said earlier, doing upper level over the big open warehouse spaces, which could increase us to another 793 students. And then we could potentially have even more if we did expansions to the exterior of the building, expanding out to the property. So then we kind of look at a timeline and why this timeline for us to purchase this building sooner than later to hit that occupancy for the 25 school year. We would have to do the currently right now, we should be in the programming phase, and that's with just doing all of the surveys and community involvement. Between May and June, we have schematic design. June to August, design development, and then August to September, construction documents, September through November, building permits, so that we can actually take occupancy on July 1st and get ready for kids to be in a space.
And so in here's the assumption that the transaction would close around the end of December, the end of the calendar year, and that we'd be going into the space there in January 25 to actually begin the actual renovation work.
Might I make a recommendation if we use this slide for the public, that we migrate it to chronological order and that we designate 2024 versus 25 just for simplicity, clarity, and absorption ratios.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's the last slide we have in the presentation. Is there any questions, or where would you like us to go from here?
I have a question that does not relate to the slide. It relates to the contract. If we vote yes on this and we approve this today and you're moving forward with the contract, things that are inclusions or exclusions, is there still negotiation room with that? Or is it, this is what we're done?
No, and in fact, actually, the contract says that there will be continued negotiations, good faith negotiations about exclusions and exclusions over the inspection period. So, there's
Excellent.
time for that.
Excellent. That makes me excited.
Good.
Team. Sir, Mr. Norris.
Just out of curiosity, what's the square footage of the two high schools? If you don't know now, that's okay.
Do you have it? And it should be really quickly defined here. Lewis Palmer High School, let's see. Oops. All right. Lewis Palmer High School is 287,172 square feet, and Palmer Ridge is 338,170 square feet.
Thank you. Real reason I wanted to speak, that was just for my own edification, just to see if the vocational and the classroom square footage line up, and it seems to be off. Aside from that, Brett, thank you for your steadfast dedication for advocating for D38 up in Denver. that resulted in the passage of 2417. Thank you for the entire state on all the other schools that get to share in the success of that passage. So thank you for being the advocate that you were and the amount of time you spent up in Denver. Ron, you've shared with me this vision since my first day on board and back in April. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for that commitment. I appreciate you pushing this forward as well. The admin team, the entire the executive leadership team and the board, thank you. We won't see speed bumps come along our way. But what was really good to see everybody coming together and trusting each other to make this decision, knowing that we can really accomplish anything we put our minds to. So thank you for that.
Welcome. Thank you.
Any other? Thank you, sir. Thank you all for your input. Any other discussion before we go to a vote? Because this is a big deal. It's exciting, but it's also a big deal. And to your points, the fact that we are looking at this and being creative, which is what our community has always said, find a way to make things happen and be creative with it, without having to go to taxpayers. And we've talked about this in board meetings before, where CTE is not a replacement for college or career. It is a pathway. And students that come out of these innovation and CTE programs are more competitive and better prepared to go into a 4-year degree path, or to go directly into career fields with certifications and experience, real life hands-on direct experience. We see corporations these days taking students from these CTE programs and creating internships for them out of high school, where they're then getting their college concurrently while they're employed, paid for through those employment opportunities. And the reality is, this is where we're seeing education. Education today is different than education when we had just chalk and a chalkboard. Education today for our students is hands-on experience where they're being competitive, and it's no longer a student walking around a hallway with an imaginary SAT, ACT score floating above their head. Students that are coming out of these programs are competitive, and if we don't step up, we are doing our students an injustice, because we are failing to ensure that our D38 students are competitive to their peers who are competing for the same pathways outside of high school and beyond. So I think that's the fact that we've been talking about this is important, and it's something that we're going to get left behind if we don't do something. The other thing that we are starting to see ourselves get left behind is we have early colleges where we can bring those students back to D38, where their education path is not just in a building in a different school district, but that their education is in our school district with their peers, and that they're able to be both in innovation early colleges pathway and still be in classrooms in our 2 high schools at the same time in the same day. We have students that are doing the Ascend program. There's a lot of different opportunities for kids out there to make sure that they've got that competitive edge going into college. And I'm excited that we are recognizing that and wanting to make sure that our students are still leaders when they graduate our schools. That's my thoughts. Any other thoughts? No? All right. Well, then I think we are ready for a vote. Ms. Wood?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right. And with that, also, what I appreciate, I want to throw out there too, Mr. Ridgway, is you bringing us to a place where the student dollars follow the student. which is how, as I understand it from your presentations, is what makes this sustainable beyond just the cost of a building.
Correct. Operational support, operational execution of programs is all about where the students are at and and the revenue that the students bring by being a student and the appropriate revenue that is. And so we want to make sure that that is best applied to where the students are at. So that is the path that we're on.
And that will be important because the community is going to ask how we're going to pay for it. And I think they're going to, obviously, to fund a new center, they're going to want to know where the money is coming from, what we might be taking away from our schools or programs, if that's the case, or how we're going to. So it's just going to be really important to communicate that in a way that the public can understand, not just look at 2,000 cell spreadsheets and make sense of them.
2,000. Don't limit me that much. Thank you.
We'll put it in a one-pager with graphs and colors.
Hey, I have no numbers, so it's fine with me, but it can be hard to follow.
And by the way, just to Ms. Upchurch's point, according to the Colorado Department of Education, there are about 870,000 public school students in the state. High schools, if you just take 4 13s, right, K through 12 plus, it represents what, 4 divided by 13 represents a little under 20%, right? 18-ish%. So if you take a little under a fifth of 800,000 and change, it's a couple hundred thousand. According to the Department of Education in our state, the latest statistics are there already are 276,300 students enrolled in CT, and all of those are likely middle and high school across 401 high schools. So we are already behind the 8 ball, and this will enable us to do everything that Ms. Upchurch said, which is remain competitive in some of the adjacent areas to standard classical academics. Very valuable.
And I'm looking forward to, I like Innovate D38. I really do.
38,
Yeah, Innovate 38. So June 20th, and I look forward to us getting that information out there. And to your point, Mr. Brown, ensuring that all voices have a place at the table as we continue on this journey. Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
I think we're adjourned.